That's like where I think we'll find the cows.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
I like it. Hopefully the cows like it.
Inception to completion is like 2 years, give or take. Some days the crew was just me or me and my husband, bless his heart. And other days, the biggest we got to was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We shot on 3 cameras. When we had the most ability to take time to build the camera, it was on a Vericam. All the way down to from horseback, we were filming with the Sony a7S III. I spent 15 or 16 shoot days with Holland and Coley. Okay, so I'm also an editor. So I'll just say, not as many as I've done in other situations, but edits are always this process of cutting and then thinking it's done and realizing it's not and pushing forward. That's how you get to the end. So we had 3 different rough cuts, I think. So assembly, 3 rough cuts, couple fine cuts.
I love this work. I love this lifestyle. And maybe I'll just be so good at it, I'll become a millionaire and buy my own ranch.
Are you overworked and underpaid? Is that what you're telling me?
How did you meet Holland and Coley? Why did you decide to focus on these 2 women for Bitterbrush?
The part that's always a surprise is I was actually living next door to them. So they were my neighbors. I was living out on that land. I lived there full time in a cabin that was off grid. My husband and I did for 3 years. And so there were 2 kind of burning, simmering, whatever desires that I had. And the one was to do something with this experience of living so close to the land that I had and how I had found that transformative. And the other was that I really wanted to work with women. I felt like it was time to make a film with women. So the intersection of those 2 things, like it was an X on one spot, which was this. I think when you meet people, you think to yourself, I think this is a movie, but if it's really, truly observational and there isn't some structure predetermined in place, like, oh, there's a competition or there's something to be completed, there's a little bit of risk that's always involved. Like, will I be able to get what I want? But when you have people who are really like gnawing on a personal problem, which both of them were at the beginning of the season, having to do with how do I balance my family and my work desires and like, how do I make this work economically? And like all of these kinds of things that they were just chewing on. And they were old friends. So I knew that if they were going to spend the summer alone in a cabin, they were going to chew on this stuff together. You just say, okay, I think it's going to work. And you're like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make it work. It's a decision.
There's at least 2 different people that file bankruptcy out there. And so I think 2 or 3 this year, stuff getting repoed.
What was it like being around them in this transformative time as these women did kind of figure out what their next steps would be after years of range riding?
I mean, it was like being around friends, because who isn't thinking about those things all the time, particularly when it came to the children thing. I was pregnant the whole summer that we were shooting, or the first half of the summer. Then I gave birth, and then I had this tiny person. So I was really sympathetic to what Holland was going through, and we were talking, off camera about these things too. And then I think also it's like nowadays, who isn't constantly reevaluating and pondering and thinking about what does the future entail? It felt normal to talk about those things. I have that with the film industry, like, how do I make this work? These are just human questions.
Well, tell me about how your pregnancy kind of impacted filming. How did it first, provide that source of connection that you just mentioned? And then also, how did it impact the way you directed? Obviously, you can't really be on horseback when you're 8 months pregnant.
You can be, but but the doctor doesn't advise it, we'll say.
There you go.
I am not the skilled writer that Holland and Coley are, so I wasn't comfortable with the risk that would entail. So I was not on horseback in that first part of the shoot. But it was a point of connection for sure. I mean, I was becoming a mother for the first time, and Holland was becoming a mother for the first time. These are really fundamental changes in how you structure your life. We often don't totally understand how we're going to balance the desires that we have for our career to continue with the big unknown, and that nobody really prepares you for, of what this having this little person come into the world is going to mean for your life. So that was something that it was really a point of connection once I found out that she was pregnant. I didn't, know at the beginning. She knew I was pregnant, so then when she met my baby, she had just become pregnant, and it was this interesting kind of handoff.
You're gonna make a phenomenal housewife.
Were you inspired stylistically by any Westerns while filming? And were there other things that you aimed to avoid?
It was more about the aim to avoid. One of the guiding impulses had to do with sort of being a woman in the world. The other had to do with the world and the land. And so it was really important to me that the film didn't present the land as a backdrop where humans have their playtime. I wanted it to be clear that these women are living on this land. The land is affecting their day-to-day life. They are having to contend with nature, and at the same time, they're in it, right? They're part. So it's an intertwined thing, and it's a real challenge to think about how do you overcome that, because the cinematic norm of the Western really does have kind of the backdrop, the stunning, and they're gorgeous, right? These are gorgeous Westerns. So I wasn't trying to say make it ugly, but I was thinking about how do we find little ways of filming that will give us more of an embedded sense of being in the land. And so that was the working against. And then the other, I think, was just, I was thinking about things that inspired me, but it really wasn't coming from the genre of the Western. The only two things were actually references that I told my DPs were coming from sensory ethnography, and then the New World, the opening of the New World. And so it's kind of thinking about these complex relationships and different ways of understanding land and air and sea and water, all this, that opening sequence for me. I mean, obviously I wasn't at the budget level to have done it, but if I could have, I would have been up in the sky and under the water and,
Look how cute she is.
She's a savage beast.
She's going to be.
Tell me about your use of music in the film. Why did you opt to go with these Bach keyboard tracks?
I mean, first and foremost, because I didn't want to frame them into that sort of stereotypical cowgirl thing. So I didn't want to go the Western music route. I wanted the music to suggest how I saw them. And so that meant I wanted the music to have a lot of dignity. And I wanted the music to maybe suggest their spiritual concerns or their spiritual connection to the work that they do. And I wanted something that mirrored the sort of the formality of the film structure. So that's Bach. It's formal. It's refers to sort of churchliness, and it's very dignified, right? It's something that I understand reads as the director's voice saying something in the film, and I'm sure people will sense that. And I wanted it to be that way because I want to say the way that I see these two women is that they are this, right? Rich and deep and smart and highly skilled and full of dignity. And something about, slide guitar just didn't do that.
Almost to the top. You're like the top. You get to go down.
Historically, this is not a profession where, at least the wider world gets a chance to see a lot of women working in. How did you work to kind of present the practical or business aspect of that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to not skip that, in part because there is a kind of like, I don't know, maybe sexy cowgirl thing that exists. And I was like, this isn't what we're doing, right? These are really smart, really skilled working women. And so, we're going to start from the place of who we know we are, and we're going to just tell the story that way and set aside any of these kind of externalities that might be more objectifying. And one of the things about the who we are is that incredible expertise. And you only get that understanding of the expertise by seeing them hard at work and hearing them talk about their work kind of in the details, in the nitty-gritty mundane things that might sound like, it's a risk that they might be boring. But I wanted enough of that in there that we understand, like, these are savvy, strategic women who are trying to figure this out for themselves.
The past 6 years of just getting to this point.
Has it been 6 years?
I don't know, Facebook tells me all the time, but damned if I can remember.